Hey everybody, welcome back to NikkiT.live. It's been a minute, been traveling, been super busy, but we're back. Yeah, and today I'm hanging out with my friend Dev Agrawal. Dev, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's good. Yeah, well, I mean, we chat briefly all the time on socials, but it's been a minute.
Mhm.
Since we hung out. I'm trying to remember what we last talked about. It might have been solid, but it might. I think I'm trying to remember.
As clerk.
Oh yeah, it was Clerk. That's right. Yeah, totally. Hey, how's it going, Jeff? Hey, Anthony. Good to see everybody. Cool. Yeah. So I know the folks that just joined the chat know who you are, but for folks who might not know who you are, just give us a little TLDR of the legend that is.
Yeah, I'm Dev and I'm a dev. That's how I often like to introduce myself. I've been building full stack JavaScript apps for about 9 years at this point. Um, just kind of like everything from freelancing, contract, consulting, hobby, part-time, full-time, kind of did a whole variety of there. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in India. I came to the US for my undergrad degree about in like 2018,
Okay.
and I've been here kind of since then. And About like 3 years ago, I got or 3 or 4 years ago, I got into like content creation, dev tools as well. And then about 2 years ago, I started getting heavily into like JavaScript frameworks,
Okay.
doing a bunch of experiments with React, with Solid, and that eventually kind of landed me into the core team of Solid.js.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. It's uh, Ryan Carnatu created it. Worked with him for a little while at Netlify. Uh, we didn't work closely together, but he obviously knows a lot about frameworks, so it's always good chatting with
Oh yeah.
him. And yeah, no, the Solid.js project, it's a really great project. Like, and I guess like for people that might not be in this, understand what Solid is, like we're gonna talk
Mhm.
about Solid 2 today, but like you know, when people first look at it, there's obviously
Mhm.
similarities to React, or if you've used Preact,
Right.
like because you've got the JSX. So like, uh,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people automatically assume it's React or it's just like a
Mhm.
React meta framework. And I guess maybe speak to like what are some of the key differences from like React, where people are used to like use effects,
Mhm.
re-rendering anytime state changes, or like a provider
Mhm.
provides new state from the parent, etc. Um, yeah,
Mhm.
I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, I was kind of like aware of React and kind of how React works for a while, but I only started using it in like 2020. Um,
Okay.
and The first project that I was using React on was like a huge Angular JS project that we were migrating to React,
Okay.
because that was the cool thing to do in the late 20 in like 2019, 2020 era. I was like moving Angular projects to React. Um,
Yeah.
so um, yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I was a big fan of Angular at that time. Um, so for a while, I didn't quite get React,
Okay.
but a few months working into it, I think the hooks model, the context, like composition model that kind of React tries to like really advocate for, I think that at some point that clicked with me, and after that I just became a huge fan of React. um,
Yeah.
it was just like a really nice and elegant way of defining, abstracting and composing logic using these hooks. um, and
Yeah.
Once it clicked, it just made sense to me. um, and I was a pretty big fan of that. And eventually, when I found Solid, I think what just happened was that it gave me all the parts of React that I loved, but
Yeah.
without the things about React that I hated or that were foot gunny or like uh, yeah, that caused a lot of problems with the React projects that I've been on. So
Yeah.
that's kind of that's kind of like my mental model of Solid, is that it gives me the best parts of React without the worst parts of React. Um, but that's kind of like high level and abstract. I think um, like the key difference there is that components in Solid don't re-render like
Mhm.
components in React do.
Yeah.
um, you can think of it more like as a constructor of a class, or like a setup function, where the component will run once initially to set everything up, and then it'll never rerun again.
Yeah.
But when your data changes, your UI just kind of like updates automatically. um, and whatever your logic is for your, like, whatever your stateful logic is, they kind of live inside these signals, which are these like functions and values that automatically rerun when they need to.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so with React, what happens is that whenever some piece of data changes, any components that depend on it will rerun with that new value so that everything updates.
Mhm.
But with Solid, the components themselves don't depend, like, um, don't rerun. They don't like with the updated data. Instead, you just have these. It's almost like a graph of dependencies where you have some data, and then you have some derived state that depends on that data, and only that derived state needs to rerun to get the new value, and then its derivations, like the data that, like, it just keeps kind of like going down the graph until it reaches the UI. So
Yeah.
for the first part, it like, obviously performance is kind of like the obvious win for most of the time, that hey,
Yeah.
instead of rerunning components, you're only rerunning the things that actually need to rerun,
Mhm.
and you don't need to worry about the other things. um, but
Yeah.
for me, I think rerunning components is less about performance and more about just like my mental sanity. I've spent so much time debugging, like, in like, not necessarily infinite loops, but basically infinite loops that are caused by re-renders, by use
Yeah.
effect, and the way that you just eventually end up writing React code, because the way that it's structured, the way that it works, it's like the default experience with React tends to be like things get re-rendered over and over again, and you
Yeah.
have to do a lot of work to kind of figure out why it's happening, how to get rid of it, because these bugs are never going to be something that you are going to discover. The user is going to discover these.
Yeah.
They're not even going to know why the app is slow. You're not going to realize why the app is slow sometimes. You'll waste a lot of hours trying to figure out why things are re-rendering. Instead, I just like having a fundamental guarantee from the architecture
Mhm.
that if I follow the idiomatic patterns, then things are just going to work as expected. I don't have to add a bunch of additional logic to try to memoize things. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of like my high level model of how I think about Solid. What are like the best parts of React, like the functional composition, the kind of hooks model that it provides me, and of course, like function components and JSX. Like those things are absolutely fantastic things that
Mhm.
React kind of innovated on, like bringing templating right into the JavaScript instead of keeping a separate file that you have create references to. Um, yeah. So, and I think with Solid 2.0, it it keeps following the same kind of theme where it brings the best parts of React's concurrent model, but
Yeah.
without the additional kind of like baggage that React comes with.
Yeah. I think I haven't created a lot of solid applications, but like I remember I built a demo with Solid for a talk I gave. It was at like Netlify Compose in 2024, I think. And while I was
Nice.
building out, like I obviously already understood React, but like the thing is when you're coming from React, it's not the same expectation. Like it's not a bad thing at all. It's just I had to change my mental model. Like I knew there was
Yeah.
signals, but you actually write your JSX differently in React because, and I don't mean the syntax. I just mean like, you know what I mean? Like because it always re-renders, you can have a like, if this thing
Early
then show
returns.
it, and that's not how it works with the signal. So like I remember. and it's just because I had the React mental model in my head, and I'm like trying to figure out this bug, and I'm like, oh, it's not a bug. It's just I just have to put a signal here, and so I just found that funny just coming from React, but like it it is like I know uh Ryan was like super influenced by Knockout JS, and I used that like years ago when I was doing .NET. Um, and like you had like your compute
Nice.
functions and stuff, and it's like it's really cool. But it was literally like it only changed it where it was, right? Or if you had like something else referencing it, when it got recomputed, it would update it in a few places, obviously, kind of like PubSub with the signals here. But it's like I think the thing that threw me off, and we lost Dev for a sec. He'll be back probably. Um, anyways, while Dev's coming back, I'm just gonna go back to the dashboard to make sure he makes it back. He will at some point. Um, but basically, uh, yeah, like with the signals, like you literally just have like where React would re-render the whole thing. um, Basically with signals, it's like you get that initial render, and then like you have signals for certain things, like you update the count. You're back there. We lost you for a sec, but it's okay. Classic live streaming stuff. I've gotten used to when guests drop sometimes, but yeah, like I guess basically what I was saying, like the main difference is you always get that initial render. Like it obviously has to render the whole thing first with solid, like the template, and that's similar to React, but you obviously have the signals on the solid side, but it's after that initial render that it's only then do you get the laser focus, like wherever your signals are being used or consumed. But I think maybe speak to this too, and like how you use the props is very important too, because like if you destruct them, and because I ran into all these things, because like it was like the first time I was building a solid app. Like I don't know, maybe speak to that and like why, because like in React or JavaScript in general, it's very common to destructure so you can get the properties. And I guess maybe explain to the folks why that's problematic in the solid JS world.
Yeah, for sure. I think one quick thing there is that I think most people that work with Solid, it definitely took them a bit of time to understand its model, and I'm definitely part of that crew there. But honestly, it's the same with React. I had to like really use React and
Yeah,
try to understand React for like 1 or 2 months before it actually clicked with me. And then like that's the point when I started actually enjoying it, and I became like actually familiar with its mental model. And it's the same thing with Solid, that the first time I was using it, my mental model was completely upside down, because I wrote a use effect, or a create effect, which is like a use
yeah,
effect. And like in React, the component outside your effect runs all the time, and the effect only runs a few times, like when its dependencies change.
yeah.
um, but with Solid, it's the opposite. It's the effects that rerun and the component doesn't. Um, so
Okay, yeah, yeah,
that took me a while to click, because I was expecting the components to be rerunning instead of the effect. But obviously it was the other way around. Um, and so these kind of like, I guess like maybe you can call them React brain or
yeah,
Reactisms that I had to kind of unlearn before I um, really understood Solid.
yeah.
And destructuring props is another aspect of it. So the reason that you cannot just destructure props is because
I,
signals or a some reactive state, or like an object that is reactive. It doesn't exactly look like just a regular object with properties that you can just like destructure or access.
mhm.
um, because with signals, when you read, the actual value of the signal matters. It's not just a value, it's kind of like a wrapper around a value. And when
Yeah.
you go and actually read that value to like maybe console log it, or render it in some JSX, or maybe derive it for some other piece of state, um, that process of reading a signal establishes the value. like a dependency to that signal with wherever you are actually reading it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if you're reading it inside a memo, or if you're reading it inside JSX,
Yeah, you're breaking up for a sec. But yeah, you're saying if you
that
read the,
JSX now is that
I think yeah, you're back now.
okay, am I back?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. You're saying how like if you
um,
use it in a create memo
mhm.
or etc.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, so the reason destructuring doesn't work is because as soon as you destructure an object, you're basically reading all the properties inside it on top, like at the top of that function. And
Mhm.
you don't want to do that because you want to actually read those values inside this, like in the specific JSX nodes or in the specific like create memos that you're actually using it. um, because if you just read it on the top of your component, it's not, the component's not going to rerun again, so you will always have a reference to a stale value instead
Yeah,
of like the updated value. And actually solid 2.0 gives
we lo- we're losing you, Dev. The Matrix telephones swallowed you up.
gives you an actual like warning. Let me, I might be able to switch to a different. Okay, yeah. But yeah, so am I back? I'm back now, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, you're saying
Um,
you're about to say something about with Solid 2.0, it's a little different.
yeah, so Solid 2.0, it gives you an actual warning in development if you accidentally read something, like basically like if you accidentally read something outside a reactive scope.
Okay.
So for example, if you just read a signal in your component body, or if you destructure props, you're going to get a warning in development, which wasn't the case in Solid 1.0.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
So
like a small thing that.
is that linting rules or is that something just with the dev server running
No, it's the
or?
runtime.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's the actual runtime where like, so again, when you read a signal, the scope that you're, the memo or the JSX, the effect that you're reading it inside, it automatically creates a subscription, which means the runtime is aware of like, oh, now you're reading a signal, but now the runtime is also aware that, oh, we are running inside a component. This is not a memo function, and you're trying to read a signal. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's the runtime that's giving you the warning. Obviously, like linters have been helpful there, but linters cannot always catch everything.
Yeah.
They can catch like the things that are statically visible. Um, but now the runtime itself will tell you uh, a warning so that you things that can escape the linter can also be caught.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And it's actually nice that it's at in the runtime, so it's like during development,
Mhm,
not a like a a post like or a pre-commit script or something. So no, that's pretty
mhm,
good. Um, yeah, I guess I guess like when you destructure, it's kind of like you know what I mean. If you had a class with methods on it,
mhm.
as soon as you structure them, the method is still there, but it loses its this.
The-
So you gotta
yes.
so you have to bind it. Like I imagine you could probably destructure it and then do something wonky to kind of ensure, but like
Mhm,
basically the best practice is just try not to destructure or for stuff that you like. I guess is there anything that would be okay stale? I'm assuming no. Like everything in the it's
mhm.
reactive. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, it's just these are just like I think if you were coming too solid from not React, this probably
Yeah.
you wouldn't run into these issues. But
Mhm,
obviously, like React is quite popular. I'm a big fan of it. Like we were talking about
mhm,
it briefly, but like Solid solves this issue too. It's like any kind of like 'cause a lot of times people will say like, oh yeah, why is the front end so complicated? It doesn't have to be. It's like it's not. it's one thing like when it's like 1995 and all you have is like an alert or a confirm, but like a lot of the
Right.
logic, there's a lot of complex stuff, like it's rich UIs, like, and to manage that, like, in a manageable way, it's like, yeah, sure, you could do this with vanilla JavaScript and stuff, and
Mhm.
maybe create a signal, but it's like, I don't know. I need to ship things. I don't want to recreate it because you're gonna end up
Yeah.
recreating some kind of mini framework. Is what's gonna happen anyways, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, I
Yes.
created this
Absolutely.
buffer function. It wraps query selector all, and then blah blah blah. So that's not to knock anybody. I'm just saying, like, I think there's valid reasons why we have frameworks and meta frameworks. There's a reason. And I don't think I could go back, honestly. Like, there's
Hmm.
there's other frameworks, but I honestly love JSX, the syntax. It's HTML like. I'm also a big fan of Astro, and so like Astro components,
Hmm.
they're HTML like as well. But anyways, yeah. So like, I think that's just, it's been like a huge unlock for just doing any kind of non-trivial like development. Um, I guess a few things like, so I guess what are the big things in 2.0? Because like I'm blurring the lines, I think, because like I remember Solid 1.0, and then there's been a beta for a while. Like, I know there's a
Hmm.
suspense. Was that in 1.0, or did that come in like one of the betas? I can't even remember, honestly. Um,
Yeah, so if you're familiar with how suspense and transitions work in React, they have been a part of like Solid one for a very long time. Um, it's another one of those small things where like Solid, like React has always had like very lackluster support for actually using suspense for like the things that you might want to use. And
yeah,
most of the ecosystem, like some of the ecosystem, like tried to come up with hacks for it. um, and then obviously React kind of like uh, very like only officially released like suspense support very recently, and then Next.js was like probably the only way to actually use suspense as they meant it. But
yeah.
Solid has that had that support for a long time. A lot of its ecosystem grew up with that, with like suspense and transitions built in, rather than having to tack on later. So they've been supported for a while, though that nothing new there. But what Solid 2.0 is doing is um, kind of streamlining that model in a lot of ways,
Okay.
and getting rid of some of its issues, some of its like weird edge cases, and in general, like it's more about making asynchronous logic like part of the core reactive system itself,
Yeah.
rather than like a completely synchronous system where you add some asynchronous logic on top of it. Solid 2.0 like makes it a fundamental kind of assumption that hey, you're going to be writing asynchronous logic. The core runtime, the core reactivity is going to take care of it, and that eliminates so a lot of like kind of the logic that you might have to write in userland, like in your components.
Mhm.
um, and it also like makes it easier to kind of think about your asynchronous data as well. uh, and actually the suspense component has been like renamed to loading in
Okay.
Solid 2.0 instead of suspense as well.
That's
Yeah.
essentially what it is. You're just
Yeah.
deferring the rendering of something, and then you typically have a
Hmm.
placeholder. So yeah, because like, I mean, I know what suspense is, but loading actually seems
Hmm.
more appropriate name. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. I guess we can demo some stuff. I know your internet's having a few issues. We can try sharing your screen if you want. I think you said you
Hmm.
had a bit of a demo we could talk through. If for some reason it gets a little wonky with the internet, I can
Hmm.
load up something if you want. But we can. You want to? I guess I can't remember what you were gonna demo, but we can take a peek if you want.
Yeah, honestly, it's just a like simple to do app. There's nothing
Okay.
too fancy here. um, I think the main thing there is probably just like how the authoring experience might change between either like the solid that you're using today or the React that you're using today
Yeah.
versus the solid 2.0 um, as it's intended. And currently it's in beta. um, yeah, it's been in the works for about 2 years now, honestly. It
Okay.
a little, just a little under 2 years, maybe even more. Some of the like ideas and notes that Ryan has for these APIs, they have existed for even longer, probably like for 5 to 6 years. Um,
Okay.
but finally, it's like reaching a point where you can actually like pick it up, use it, build something with it, and um, yeah.
Okay. I see you have a generator function in there. Is that required or is that
Yes.
just you? Okay.
Yes,
I
we'll get to actions in a bit.
okay. I've used
Mhm,
generators a little bit. I know what they are, but it's
mhm,
just that I haven't. It's not a typical thing I reach for in an app. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess like we can talk very quickly about it. The reason why this is a generator, like this could just be uh, like if you're familiar with async context or async local storage,
Yeah.
you can imagine that once async context is a thing, this would just look like this. Like it would just be an async function with an await.
Yeah.
Oh, it's complaining because yeah. And the reason is that once you have an await in a function, you lose context or like synchronous context. um and async context kind of provides it, but it doesn't exist in the browsers yet. And the only reason this is a generator function is because yield instead of await, it allows you to retain some context. So
Yeah.
um, um, like some sort of global context where you can access things from. We can get more into it later, but that's the only reason that this is a generator function.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would just be an ace. Eventually, it will just be async await once we have async context in the browser.
Yeah, because it's only in the JavaScript runtimes right now. Like for Node, I'm assuming Bun has it. I know.
Yes.
I know that Dino has it because when I was working at
Hmm.
Netlify, Next.js was using Node APIs, and
Yes.
we actually the reason why it's in Dino is we actually had to ask them we can't run Next.js on Netlify
Yes.
unless you do this. So it was kind of funny. But anyways,
Hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think that's also why it exists. It almost certainly exists in Cloudflare workers.
yeah,
It
100.
it wasn't part of the like the what Winter CG,
Yeah,
but because
yeah,
Next.js was
exactly.
using it, everyone had to support it.
Yeah, because everything was supposed to be, request, response, web standards, and then
Hmm.
boom, this showed up. So, like,
Yeah.
anyways, just a little funny anecdote for, well, maybe just for
Hmm.
framework nerds, maybe, but anyways, yeah. So, okay, so that makes sense for the generator
Hmm.
function then. Okay, so yeah, so like you said, obviously it's a to-do app, nothing mind-blowing, but it's a good way to showcase some of this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, so if you've used Solid, if you've tried to like do any sort of asynchronous like data fetching in Solid, you might be familiar with create resource, which is kind of like a small mini version of TanStack Query that's built into
Mhm.
the Solid framework, that's integrated with the reactivity. It doesn't have like any of the fancy caching mechanism that TanStack Query does. You would still want to use TanStack Query for that.
Yeah,
But basically like create resource is something that like you give it some reactive value, and you give it like an asynchronous function to maybe like fetch some data, and then create resource will give you a signal that would be like the val it would be the value or undefined, and then it would give you like loading states, error states, things like that.
yeah,
So it was
exactly.
kind of like an yeah, it was kind of like an all-in-one for all the asynchronous logic that you might have. Solid
Yeah.
2.0 doesn't have create resource because
Okay.
every signal, any signal function can just accept a promise. So for example, here I have create memo, which
Yeah.
is like usually how you just derive synchronous state. But this to do API dot list to dos, it returns a promise of a to do, or like promise of a list of to dos. Right.
Okay.
So this is how you would fetch a data from like some sort of a backend. Um, but if we look at like again in solid 1.0, this to do signal would have a promise inside it, and then
Okay.
inside that promise you would have that data, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But
Okay. Gotcha.
here but here you just have the data itself. So you can see that here I am just applying a dot filter on the to-dos. So this is not, yeah, it just returns a list of to-dos. It doesn't return a promise. It doesn't return a list of to-dos or undefined. It just gives you the data. And what happens when the data is not there, but well, like the async lifecycle itself, Solid takes care of it. And it just allows you to derive on top of the data itself without
Okay.
worrying about promises and without worrying about undefined states. And it's just built into the reactivity. So any like create memo or any reactive function that you have, it just automatically handles any asynchronous logic without
Okay. So,
having to use a special API like create resource.
okay. So like, so the like on line 19 there where you have the to dos, we did a create memo, like you said,
Hmm.
memo, not memo. Like you said, it returns a promise of to dos. The uh, but like oh yeah, sorry for the yeah there. So when we do the create memo, it's
Hmm.
on line 19F or yeah there. It
Hmm.
basically implicitly awaits it at some point and then is able to do the filter
Yes.
and stuff. Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
That-
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's kind of nice too, because like async await is great and stuff, but like
Hmm.
uh, it's the classic, like even with async await, it looks like you're reading a synchronous code, but this makes it look like you're
Hmm.
reading synchronous code even more. And
Yes.
I wonder if you've had feedback from people, or like maybe it threw them for a loop initially, like because you know what I mean. If you think it's synchronous, it's not. It's obviously not
Hmm.
going to behave the way you expect.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think that's a really important point that async await makes it look like synchronous code. But the problem with async await is that as soon as you add an await somewhere, the entire function, like that, the entire async function just kind of stops there until
Yeah,
that promise resolves. And once it resolves, it continues from the await, and the things below it start working.
yeah,
Um, so here, if you imagine like if this was like an asynchronous component, like maybe it's something like a React server component, maybe
yeah,
you would just have to do's is await, um, like to do API.list to do's, right? This is how you might fetch using async await, maybe in like a React server component, or maybe in like
yeah,
Svelte with async today. But the problem is like once this await hits, everything below, if nothing below is going to ever run until
yeah,
this promise resolves. And once it resolves, you're going to start running the things under it. Um, but the thing about Solid is that components are not only synchronous; they're setup functions. Components never rerun, and they never like await or block. Which means once this memo has been created,
yeah.
the component itself doesn't need to wait for to-dos to be resolved. It can just
Okay,
like keep running the entirety of the component body immediately, and it can render all of its children, all of its subchildren. It can create all the other like signals or memos or like events. It can do pretty much everything, um, like without having to actually wait for this data.
yeah,
Again, because like I mentioned earlier, where you read a signal matters. So you're only reading a signal inside these functions, inside derivations, or inside your JSX. So
yeah,
where it is going to block. So okay, let's trace this. So we have our todos.filter that gives us a remaining count, and we have this todos obviously. And if we
yeah,
come down here, we're going to see that we are looping over all our todos using the for component. Um, and then we have this show here that like checks the length and then tells you that hey, there's nothing left, or like
yeah,
there are no to-dos here, right? So you're actually reading the to-dos here, which means this is what's actually going to block. This is what
yeah,
is actually going to await, or like wait for the to-dos resolve before it does anything.
yeah,
Nothing else here, like this loading or yeah, this like this form here, this has a label, it has an input, it has a button. None of these things actually depend on
Hmm.
our like asynchronous to-dos. So
Yeah.
we don't need to stop rendering this. We can render all of this, hold it in memory, and once um, maybe even like show it on screen.
Yeah.
And we don't actually need to wait for it. And this will work even though like it's literally in the same component. Like here
Yeah.
you're fetching the data and here you're rendering something, but you're going to be able to see this immediately even if you haven't rendered this. Um,
Yeah.
and that's because of the second nice thing, which is that solid can like whenever solid can like implicitly keep track of like the loading state.
Yeah.
So while it's rendering all of it, while it's fetching this data, solid knows that to-dos is going to be like populated in the future. It's pending right now. And it can transmit that pending state through its dependencies. So for example, let's remaining count here. It's just a regular function, but let's make this a create memo as well.
Okay.
So now this is a memo that gives us like how many to-dos, like how many to-dos are remaining, right? And if we see where we are using it right here, so when we are rendering this paragraph or this p tag, and
Yeah.
we try to read the remaining here, solid will know right here that, oh, remaining isn't actually available. It's some asynchronous state that hasn't been resolved yet, because remaining has a dependency on to-dos and to-dos isn't resolved yet.
Okay. Yeah. 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 No, this is super nice. I'm saying the obvious to you, but like basically, unlike React, you get all the static template either put in memory or rendered immediately in the DOM.
Hmm.
And then all these pending things are when it just does its little insertions like pop, 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 pop,
Yes.
versus
Hmm.
React where like because that's the other thing like the only way there's the use hook too now, but like before you'd have
Yeah.
hooks, you'd have to await those. It would cause a secondary render once it gets the new state, and then at that point it would
Hmm.
not render it static, but it would fill up the template, if you want to call it,
Yes.
and then you would get the render. So you would potentially get two renders like different states, whereas like
Hmm.
solid, it's always that one initial static template, whatever it is. It might include the children, and then like I
Hmm.
said, the pockets of interactivity just popping in.
Yeah.
It's and it's kind of nice, like because I guess for a few reasons. Like one, I'm assuming you could obviously have some of those like memos like imported or like the function imported, but you don't necessarily have to. I mean, you could technically do a hook, I guess, in the same file, but it
Hmm.
messes up fast refresh. But like it's kind of nice that you don't have to like do this ceremony of a hook just so you can get some
Yeah.
async data. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
or
super
or
cool.
worse, where like you have to take your component and wrap it with another component so that you can add a suspense boundary around it so
Yeah.
that you can show some loading state. um, what you might see here is that we are fetching our data right here in this component, um, and then we are rendering this, and we have our loading or our suspense component like inside this component. So we don't need to wrap this component just so that we can give it some loading indicator, um,
Yeah.
because you can have the loading indicator right in that component. And so this technically also works in solid today, where
Okay.
you can have a create resource in the same component, and then inside that component you have your suspense boundary. um, but but solid 2.0 kind of takes it like to what solid currently doesn't have is that if you fetch some data like using create resource, and then you
Mhm.
have some derived data, the derived data is not going to inherit like the loading state or the pending state from its dependencies. So
Yeah.
actually, as soon as you try to read this to dos inside a create memo, it's going to like it's all it's going to like look for a suspense boundary above this app component, and it's going to trigger that. But here with solid 2.0, you can keep deriving async data as much as you can, as much as you want. You can pass it to your children, you can like wrap it, you can like have three layers of create memos, it doesn't matter. all those
Okay.
memos are going to know that, oh, I have an async dependency that's loading, so I am loading.
Yeah.
And then once you get down like here, so yeah, so here inside our for component, we read our to-dos and we iterate over all the to-dos, right? We loop over them. So when we read our to-dos value here, this is where Solid notices that, oh, I'm trying to read some async value. It's not available yet. I need to show some fallback. And it's
Yeah.
going to start from here, and it's going to walk up the tree to see that, oh, here's a loading here's a loading component. Let's go to the fallback. So instead of starting
Okay.
from the point of where you actually fetch the data, it starts from the point where you read the data, and then
Yeah.
it goes up to like find oh, this is the loading boundary that I need to show.
Okay, that's nice. You don't have to wrap multiple things and
Yes.
yeah. Okay. No, that's very elegant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, it's kind of the
okay.
ultimate form of like you can dump all the logic in a single component, and then like only refactor them out into separate components as you actually want to. And the framework never actually forces you that, hey, this is a component boundary, this needs to be its own component. That's a
Yeah.
decision that you make as the developer, like how do I want to split this giant component into smaller components. Solid's
Yeah.
not going to force you to do specific things there.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Yeah. Because I tend to like when I build the component or a page, it's like usually I just kind of barf out the whole thing. Like I'm just, like let's get it
Hmm.
rendered and then I start slicing dicing
Yeah.
stuff and then
Hmm.
I don't know if that's how you work, but I just find that's easier for me
Same. Yeah.
because it's like, it also avoids premature like abstractions and stuff
Yes.
and so no, this is super cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to build something with Solid 2.0. I'm trying to find the release for Solid 2. Like, I guess if you're on, like, I'm
Mhm.
on solidjs.com right now. I guess it would just default to 2.0 now, or is it a
No, it's
separate?
still in beta, so it's still not the.
Okay, it is
Yeah,
still in
if
beta.
you
Okay, I
install
wasn't sure.
like, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm just gonna find a link to it. Solid.js beta 2. Okay. Things. I'll find. I find like articles and stuff, but
Mhm.
um,
Yeah,
I
because
guess.
there aren't great documentation for it yet, outside of like the 6 hour live streams that Ryan has done throughout the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah,
And the only reason that I am this familiar with it is because I watched those streams, I've experimented with it, I've kind of like helped out with the implementation. But yeah, documentation is like something that's super missing right now.
okay,
That's like documentation and ecosystem. These are like the two big missing pieces before like we can ever think about like getting this out of beta.
yeah, yeah, okay. No, no, that's cool. I misunderstood before. I thought you said it was an official release. So, but this is also, I guess,
Sorry.
good for. No, 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 no. That's my bad. I just need to learn how to hear properly. um, but I
No
guess it's a good
worries.
thing for like for the community. Like help with some resources there, contribute to the docs or the
Mhm.
project in general. But that's super cool. I guess kind of one thing I wanted to touch on too. Like I'm a big fan of TanStack Start, all things TanStack. Like
Mhm.
TanStack Query is
Yeah.
awesome. I know Tanner and Ryan are good buddies, and they like there
Mhm.
was there was a lot of churn into what like Start was gonna be. TanStack Start was gonna be. Then there was like Solid Start. I remember them.
Mhm.
They had Bling at one point with the dollar signs,
Yes.
and I I guess like TanStack starts its own thing and it like out of the box you get React, but like having
Mhm.
caught a bunch of those streams, I know Solid works with like TanStack router and I'm assuming TanStack
Mhm.
query. There's like adapters for it
Yes.
or
Yeah.
like so like I guess like if I wanted to do a TanStack start project right now, could I maybe not the
Mhm.
beta of Solid, I don't know, but like just existing Solid, is it literally just a drop-in replacement and then in TanStack start I just say like I'm using Solid, you know what I mean? Like the V plugin probably says load Solid instead of React or something. Is that kind of like all
Yes.
you really need
Pretty
to
much.
do? Okay. So that's awesome. And then
Pretty
obviously
much. Yeah. So TanStack Start. Yeah, TanStack Start has this like core package of TanStack. tanstack/start, and then it has like tanstack react start and tanstack solid start, which are the framework specific bindings. So you would need those framework specific APIs, and then you would have like the React or the Solid Vite plugin alongside
Yeah.
your tanstack start Vite plugin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's cool. Yeah. And I missed this before, but Brenly Duick, who I think he's in the Solid Discord probably, but he says the
Yes.
async model is so nice for 2.0. Um,
Yes, Brenly has been super helpful with a lot of the solid stuff. He has actually been like one of the major contributors to the solid support in Tanstack Router and Tanstack Start, and he
okay.
is currently even like literally working on like supporting Solid 2.0 within
Okay.
Tanstack Router and Start.
That's
So if
awesome.
the yeah if there's if yeah if you do use Tanstack Start with Solid, then you have Brenly and a couple other people to thank for it.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Yeah. No, it and it's just like I know this beta has been going on forever, but like I think there's good reasons. Like I know, like we were saying, I think I said it before the stream. I didn't say it on stream, but like Ryan is very technical, knows literally everything about any framework in
Oh yeah.
JavaScript land, probably. They're amazing streams. I can never dedicate five hours to one. But it's like anytime
Yeah,
I've
they're
caught
so
one though,
long.
it's like you either learn something or it's like it's just cool
Mhm.
hearing about it. Uh, that's probably a good
Yeah,
use case for AI to just give me the transcription and tell me what's the TLDR. But yeah, like I
yeah,
know there's a lot of thought that goes into the APIs and stuff, and it's like
mhm,
I guess we forgot to mention, but you're on the core team now, as far as I know, right? Yeah. So like I
mhm,
guess like how's it working within the core team? Like obviously Brian, why do I keep saying Brian? Ryan has a lot of like obviously really great ideas. Is
mhm.
everybody contributing to like how the shape of the APIs become, or is it more like Ryan has the vision and it's just more like the core team sets about implementing? I feel like it's probably collaborative. It's not just like
Mhm.
King Ryan. Just curious about the dynamic of the team.
Yeah, for sure. So the core team of Solid is like almost entirely like research people. Um,
Okay.
like the our responsibilities tend to be like research and design and experiment and feedback. Um, so for example, I don't know if you know about Milo, but he's the guy who like originally built a reactive library called Reactively,
Okay.
and which is basically what became like Angular signals and then the TC39 signals or Preact signals. Like his
Okay.
kind of like Reactively, he's also in the Solid Core team, and he kind of like built the algorithm for signals that was eventually adopted by all the major frameworks like Preact, Angular,
Yeah.
and then Vue like obviously improved on it with alien signals. But yeah, so he's part of the Solid Core team, and he basically like uh, he's like a super performance nerd, and
Okay.
he like recently he came up with like an even better signal algorithm or like
Okay.
reactive algorithm that surpasses pretty much everything else that exists, and then
Okay.
eventually that became a part of Solid as well. um,
That's awesome.
I joined the core team, or I was invited on the core team because I was doing a lot of experiments with like WebSockets and real-time work
Yeah.
with signals. Um, and then like there's a couple other people. So a lot of the core team people are kind of just like people who are like trying to push the limits of what you can do with signals,
Hmm.
just trying to come up with new ways. And when it comes to like the actual API shape and implementation for Solid, that's pretty much all Ryan. Um,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I am familiar with the code base, um, but that's because like I've just like been looking around. I've tried to like rebuild some of these things on my own as well,
Yeah.
on the side, just to like get a better understanding of them. um, but most people in the core team like they don't directly contribute to the code base. They It's more like they contribute ideas, or they
Hmm.
contribute like time and experiments and like just feedback. um,
Yeah.
and even people outside the core team, like people like Brindley in the chat, they've been experimenting and providing a lot of helpful feedback there as well. um, so one of the things, I'll give you like a one small example of how I contributed. So let me introduce you to create effect.
Okay.
um,
Here, let me switch us back to your screen share. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me introduce you to create effect. So create effect, you probably use like use effect, which like takes a function and the dependency array. But in Solid, it's just like a single function that reads data and then
Okay.
performs some side effects like logging to console or attaching DOMs stuff, anything like that. Um,
Yeah.
in Solid, in Solid 2.0, create effect actually takes two functions.
Okay.
Now this was kind of like always a part of the design, but and the reason is that the first function is actually what you where you read the reactive data. Like this is the reactive function where you're
Hmm.
going to read some signals and you're going to return some data. And then in here, like the second function is where you actually get the return value from the first function, and then you perform your side effects, like kind of like this.
Okay.
um Yeah, so create effect has now been split. It looks a bit more like React now, but it's inverted. Like the first function is like you can think of it as the dependency array. Like if I had multiple things here, I would maybe like make it an array and saying that I want to do's and text and is mutating, and then in here I would get these values, and
Okay.
then I would actually perform my side effect like you might in React, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that was happening originally is that as soon as you read something in an effect, um, it would like again try to go up and like trigger a loading boundary. Like, hey, I'm trying to run an effect. I'm reading some asynchronous data, but it's not available yet. I should probably show some like loading fallback. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but in, but that doesn't happen anymore. So if you like when you when you read like um, if you read any sort of asynchronous stuff in here, it doesn't matter. Create effect is never going to trigger a loading boundary. Um, your loading boundary is your loading boundaries are only going to be triggered by the data that you read inside in the JSX, not through these effects. And the reason for
Okay.
that is that imagine I got rid of the effect. Now like it would trigger this loading boundary, but if I add this effect back, it's suddenly going to change with which loading boundary gets triggered. So
Okay.
we had to make this change, so that create effect actually doesn't talk to it. So now create effect is like a lot more independent. Like it's just going to handle its own loading state. It's going to hold itself, and then it's going to trigger the side effect once everything is ready. It has nothing to do with your JSX tree, with your loading boundaries, anything like that. So
Okay.
these are like kind of like very small API decisions or behavior decisions where um, like where um, like I guess I get to contribute a bit of like doing some experiments and then coming up with like, oh, this scenario I actually don't want this to happen, so Solid should do this instead.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. No.
yeah,
That.
and then like there's other people like fellows and like ecosystem members and or like the star team that actually works on other parts like the web renderer. There's some people working on that to make sure like that's it's compliant with web standards. There's people like Brenly working on solid start and the other
Mhm.
ecosystem related things as well. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. 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 Yeah. And I guess that's nice. The creative fact, like you were showing the new version of it. Obviously in the second function there, which is kind of like a callback, I guess. You
Yes.
can basically at that point, like you got is mutating, and then from there you can say
Mhm.
like, uh, I guess you could do set is mutating there, and then that will be
Mhm.
reactive to cause the actual thing to change. Um,
Mhm.
and I, I guess that's nice too, because like I know you like I haven't really done this yet because I haven't done a ton of solid apps, but you can have
Mhm.
signals like outside of components. Obviously, like they can be global.
Mhm.
Does this mean
Yes.
too that like say I have a module and maybe I put the create effect in the module, and then when that changes,
Mhm.
it could affect global signals, which could affect something else.
Yeah.
Is that
Mhm.
another reason for maybe making these changes, or am I kind of stretching why the decision was made?
So one of the things that I think it's not only true about Solid, but it's also something that you would probably want to follow in React, which is that you should derive whatever data you can.
Yeah,
And in general, like calling setters from effects like this is actually kind of an anti-pattern, um, because this kind of like breaks it doesn't like break reactivity, but this is how you get like extra renders or like unnecessary updates. When you
yeah.
have an effect that then sets some signals, it's probably going to update some stuff, which is probably going to trigger some effect that's going to set some signal again, and it's just going to continue.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Obviously,
Because
it's not as bad as
infinitely.
in React, where yeah, obviously it's not as bad as React, where like you can accidentally trigger an infinite loop, because things are kind of like fine grained. So even if we do something like this, it's going to like update the signal, it's going to rerun the effect, maybe it's going to rerun some JSX nodes, and then it's going to come like do that again. But in general, you would want to derive as much of your data as you can using these create memos, or like within your JSX, rather than
Yeah,
trying to set things from the effect. Um, Now, one reason why you might want to set something from an effect is, let's say I have like props, where I get some default text to string, and and maybe like when this default text changes, let's say that I want to read, I want props.default text here,
yeah.
uh, and default text, and then I want to like set text to default text. Now, this is a pretty common pattern in React, where you receive some props, and every time that the props change, you update some local state. Right?
Yeah,
You might have done this a few times.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so this has been kind of like a valid use case of why you might want to write, why you might want to like set some signal inside an effect. But this is still like not a great thing to do. So something that's one of the main changes in solid.js or in solid 2.0 is that now you can simply pass a function inside create signal and then depend on some other value, or like derive
Okay,
from some other value.
that's nice. You don't have to do all that other ceremony. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that makes total sense because a lot of times you're like, yeah, this I want this default value from the parent component
Mhm.
or something else. Yeah, I guess like uh, maybe it's because I haven't had a coffee this afternoon. But if we go back to like the create effect where you're
Mhm.
just logging the to dos, or so you're like
Right.
if you undo a bit there, like where we get back to whatever we had, like
Mhm.
um,
Yeah. Let me.
because
Oh.
yeah, I'll let you undo. And while you're doing that,
Mhm.
we've got let me see who is that. Yeah, Wab Soriano says that's cool. Let's fucking go. Okay, good to see you. Thanks for
Nice.
joining the stream. Yeah, so I guess like because like you said, it's kind of an anti-pattern to say like set is mutating to is mutating. We've
Mhm.
got these values here now. They're in a closure now. So I'm just wondering, like, even if you derive something based on those, how are
Mhm.
you getting it out of that closure, or are you having like some variable defined outside that might not necessarily like it would need to be something reactive still, like I don't know, let's just say like the to dos I don't know, there was to dos dot like I guess the value, like whatever it is, like get
Mhm.
groceries or like buy butter.
Yeah.
And for
Mhm.
whatever reason, I just wanted to extract that, like derive
Mhm.
that data because it's already in there. Like, how am I leveraging that derived data that I know because it's stuck in that closure? Like, so
Mhm.
I'm just wondering what the best practice patterns is if you did pull out derived data there, like how would you consume it in the component? I don't know if I'm
In the
making that
component
clear or not.
or in the effect?
Well, like in the effect here, so like we have to do's text is mutating. That's the
Yeah.
data that we got once the promise is settled or whatever's async there.
Hmm.
So like
Yeah.
I want to I don't want to call a setter like for like from a create signal or anything, but like
Hmm.
I want some particular information out of the to do. So the derived data, maybe it's just the values of each to do, like get
Hmm.
butter, get milk,
Yeah.
whatever.
So something like this, like let's say to do titles, we can just make this a regular function, and yeah, we can do something like this where we map over all the to dos. And
Yeah,
so the most common way of deriving data is literally just like you write a function, you read your like signal and you derive, then you have your new signal. And if you want to
yeah,
memoize this, you can write a create memo here. um,
yeah,
and now it's memoized, which means it's only going to run once instead of running every time you read to do titles. So this is like
yeah.
the idiomatic way to take some data and to change its shape or combine it with some other data so that you can render it in your JSX.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that
Is
part
that
I get.
answering?
Like, yeah,
Okay.
like that I totally understand. I guess I'm trying to understand the use case of the second function in the create effect where we've got this derived at like you're doing console log dot to
Mhm.
do, so it's obviously not, resetting anything reactively. It's
Right.
just gonna log it. Like what's
Hmm.
a use case of like once I have that data in there, like how would I
Hmm.
like what's just a simple example of using it if I'm not calling a setter on like create optimistic or a signal, I guess. Like, and
Yeah,
like I said,
that
maybe I haven't
is,
had
yeah.
enough coffee.
No, that is a very good question. And honestly, one of the biggest goals behind Solid 2.0 has been to reduce how often you might reach for effects. What you're pointing out is exactly right, is that hey, if I'm not like updating some other state inside of an effect, why would I need an effect? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
the question, yeah. And it's actually like effects were never meant to solve that problem. The only reason we were using effects to set some other state is because we didn't have better, more core or more native ways to do these things.
yeah.
And the reason why you have this question now is because like Solid 2.0 has actually addressed that problem where you
Okay.
like even okay, the other thing that you might use effects for example in React is to fetch data, right? But we don't do that in Solid because well, in Solid 1 we had to create resource, and in Solid 2.0 it's literally just built into like the signal graph. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
obviously don't use create effect to fetch data. Now you no longer need create effect to like set some state based on some other state. So what do you use create effect for? And
yeah.
but the first answer to that is that you probably never even need to use create effect, because most reasons why you might need to are just built into the core APIs now. um,
Yeah.
but the second answer is that you actually use create effects for side effects, which is what they're actually meant to be. So like
Yeah.
if you have for example, like the most common one would be like dom dot or like document dot attack, like add event listener, was it? Yeah. So basically like you would do some side effect like listening to some events or attaching some events to the
Oh, okay,
DOM,
okay.
or
Escape
maybe
hatch.
or literally like maybe logging something to the console, or sending like some sort of a network request that isn't necessarily for like some data, um, or like interacting with a separate system that doesn't or like some other system that needs to synchronize some state. Like that's what effects are for. It's to take the state in your signals and to send them outside to something else, to something that's not your UI. That's what
Okay, yeah,
effects
yeah.
are for. They're not to like synchronize state between two different things, because that should be just a part of your signal graph.
Yeah, no, no, that makes sense. I guess I'm generally not doing escape hatches like that, but I guess like that's
Mhm.
similar. Yeah, but no, but that makes total sense then. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
for the
it is
regular
literally an
run-of-the-mill
escape
stuff.
hatch. It's not something you should be using most of the time for our actual business logic. it's like if you have some other system outside that needs this state, you use an effect to synchronize it. But if you don't, if
Yeah.
you're just building your app, if you have your UI with your derived state, you
Yeah.
most of the time you don't need an effect.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. That was just me.
Now, that was a great question.
Okay. No, it's cool. No, I'm glad. Like it's one of those things. Like this is similar to like I was telling you. I was in a meeting before because I was trying to understand something
Hmm.
at work. I was just not completely understanding it, and just a few like probing questions to my coworker. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, now I totally understand, and it's just like you know, uh, I don't know. This is a side note, but like I'm big into using AI, but it's moments like this where I need my brain to hurt. I don't need like
Yes,
ChatGPT telling me what the answer is. So no, that's
100%.
and that was a great explainer too, by the way. Okay, cool. Um, yeah. Also, thanks to MMM Mint in the Twitch chat. They mentioned that my category isn't set to software development, so they had a hard time
Oh,
discovering me. I must have reset that at some
oops.
point. I have tags and stuff, but
Hmm.
anyways, I'll look into that after. I don't think I can. Maybe
Hmm.
I can change it live. I don't know,
Hmm.
but anyways. Um, okay, cool. So yeah, I guess the TLDR with like even though it's still in beta is
Hmm.
solid 2.0 is just cleaning up some stuff, like just removing stuff you just some ceremony you no longer need to do. The APIs seem a lot tighter. Um, I definitely like this approach. It just I I think this is like you know one thing is like framework authors is like you're trying to make cool stuff obviously, but like removing any kind of friction point, like it's cool
Oh
to
yeah.
make cool tech, but like there's just really good design choices here, in terms of like and again, like we're saying at the beginning, sure, maybe if you're coming from React, there's like, oh, I don't get what's going on here. But like once you get into the solid mental model, like these nice
Hmm.
uh, cleanups, and I'm sure there's a lot that went into 2.0. I'm making it sound very trivial, but
Hmm.
it's not. But no, this is super cool. Yeah, I
No,
guess.
I think that one of the goals is that it like it should look trivial. Like you should be able to look at the new APIs and the new patterns, and they should just make sense. And
Yeah,
you should think to yourself like, why haven't I been doing things this way all along? Honestly,
yeah,
like I have been I'm showing you Solid 2.0 today, but I have been experimenting with this for like 2 years now, and for the last 2 years, every time I have to write React code, I feel like crying because it feels like so far behind what Solid 2.0 like what things that I actually get to work on that I get to contribute to. So when I
yeah,
have to go back to React, it just feels like Stone Ages. And it's a similar feeling to like when I actually got a hold of React, going
yeah.
back to like Angular JS felt like Stone Ages to me.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Angular was. I haven't really done a lot of newer Angular. Like I did a lot of Angular pre 2.0, like pre TypeScript, with the
Hmm.
digest cycle and stuff. And there's obviously issues, and but like,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot has changed there
dollar
too.
scope.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but no, this looks super cool. I'm gonna have to. I think the next thing I build, I'll just do it with two. You right? You consider the 2.0 beta pretty stable right now. Like obviously it's not the
Hmm.
final version, but like I
Hmm.
mean I'm comfortable if some things are like constantly changing potentially, but
Hmm.
uh yeah, okay, cool,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, the API shape it's pretty stable. Um, before beta it was an experimental. That's the point where like uh, the APIs might change. But beta is
yeah,
basically the APIs are stable. There might be some small subtle bugs that need to be fixed. And we obviously like don't have a great ecosystem. So for example, Solid Router doesn't support Solid 2.0 right now. TanStack Router, TanStack Start are in like
yeah,
they're also like experimental trying to support Solid 2.0. So I've been building a few apps here and there, and the main thing that I hit right now is that, oh, I don't have a router, so I have to like kind of build my own little in-memory router to do things.
okay,
I
yeah,
don't have a UI library, So if I'm comfortable with Tailwind, then I can do things, but none of the UI library supports Solid 2.0. So the next step would just be like, once the ecosystem support comes in, then it becomes a lot more feasible to use it in like actual applications.
Yeah. No, totally, totally. No, that's super cool. It's yeah, I definitely gotta get back into it. The funny thing is I'm not working in a front end capacity at the moment. I'm doing security
Mhm.
software with infrastructure, but
Right.
but like when I'm demoing stuff, like I need
Mhm.
to secure like web apps and
Mhm.
stuff. So this just gives me an excuse to just build something and say, hey, I secured it. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah, for
cool.
sure. I think
Yeah,
one other small point that's worth bringing up is like you mentioned, like getting rid of ceremony and just making like cleaning things up a bit more. I think
yeah,
in a world where we are expecting AI to write a lot of our code, I think
yeah,
those things are already important. But I think getting rid of ceremony and cleaning things up and making idiomatic patterns like performant, or I guess it's the other
yeah,
way, making performant patterns idiomatic. Um, and like having this one simple way, like you don't need extra wrappers, things like that. I
yeah.
think that's so much more helpful for agents to do things, because it's a lot smaller surface area for them to mess up.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, like I rarely start a project now, like hand coding stuff. I'm not hand coding
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of stuff in general right now.
Hmm.
Like I'm still like, reviewing things because it's obviously
Hmm.
not like one shot perfect everything. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think if the LLMs can help with like scaffolding, like it's like I did I do this with React all the time now. It's like I know how to write a React component. I don't want to write all
Hmm.
that JSX to
Yeah.
scaffold it. I'll describe it and then I'll just tweak it.
Hmm.
So yeah, if you can help the LLMs, yeah, that would definitely be a big win, I would say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for
No,
sure.
cool, cool.
I've written maybe like 5 lines of code in this entire file. This is entirely 5.5.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and it's like it's pretty bang on normally, I would say.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's such a unlock. Like I don't know, we're not talking AI today really, but like
Hmm.
just been able to move so fast. Like if you know what you're doing, like and you actually have like
Hmm.
skills. I don't mean that as a knock, but like it's kind of
Yeah.
like I don't know if you saw I, in the U.S. they had the enhanced Olympics recently, you know, and I
Oh,
kind of equate,
nice.
yeah. So like it was literally like people could take performance enhancing drugs and stuff.
Wow, I did not
Eh,
know that was a thing.
yeah, it was. I think it was like last week or a week and a half ago. I was in Europe for work, but I kind of equate AI to that because like in one of the swimming challenges or whatever you call it, there was a person that was not enhanced and they won. And this is just to go to show you that like your skills, your tastes still
Wow.
matter. Like and
Hmm.
AI is going to amplify the good and the bad. So like if you're really good at what you do
Yes. Hmm.
already, it should in theory like you should kind of become that 1,000x or
Yes.
10x or 100x. But if you're really a bad developer, it's
Hmm.
just gonna amplify how bad you are. And all I'm saying is like people out there just still focus on fundamentals and actually learning how to program. Like don't use it as a
Hmm.
crutch, I guess. Anyway, little side note.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a power tool. You can do a lot of things, but you can also hurt yourself terribly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I'm just making some toothpicks with this chainsaw. It's like, I don't know. Like, oh, I broke another one. Son of a. Anyway, um, unrelated, but I fixed my category for my Twitch stream.
Nice.
Nothing big, but I do appreciate that. That could actually explain why, like, I was getting way fewer viewers before.
Hmm.
Because, like, I mean, not that I'm like a primogen or anything, but like, I was getting like, relatively decent
Hmm.
numbers, like 10 to
Yeah.
20 viewers, and it had been lower near the end of the year, so I must have messed up something at some point. So, anyways, cool, cool. Yeah, I know we said we could go for whenever for like another hour or so, but like,
Hmm.
uh, I'm curious, like, if is there anything else you want to touch on, or like I don't know, we've done a pretty good tour of, well, I guess for folks
Mhm.
newer to Solid, I think you explained really well, like what Solid is, the concepts, and what's coming in the pipe with 2.0, just like, some cleanup to remove some friction and ceremony. Um, yeah, so yeah, I guess I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on it, or like, I guess you can't. I could ask the question that you probably can't answer. When is 2.0 going to be released?
Of course, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's always an unanswerable question. But honestly, like there's a lot of exciting things in Solid 2.0. We could talk about stores, we could talk about actions. Um, but I think one thing, again, if you're familiar with React already, one thing probably worth talking about is the way that suspense works in React and in Solid today
yeah,
is that like obviously like when you first go to a page and there's some data that you haven't yet fetched, you're going to see the suspense fallback.
yeah,
But more importantly, if you make some changes or if you refetch that data, the suspense is going to show its fallback again, right?
okay, yeah, yeah,
So basically, basically React or Solid, they will never show you an inconsistent view of the state. They will always they will show you either all the data, or they will show you the fallback
yeah,
because
yeah.
some
It's
data isn't
binary.
available.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the way that you opt out of that is by using transitions, where you like, let's say you have your URL and you
yeah,
change your URL, go to a different page, but it's not yet ready because it depends on the data. So you change your URL in a transition. So now it's going to happen in the background. It's going to change the URL. All the new page is going to be rendered fully while while the existing page stays functional. You can still interact with it. You can do something else on the current page, and the
okay,
next page is rendered in the background. And once it's rendered fully, it's going to swap in and update. So you're never going to see the suspense fallback.
yeah,
It's going to happen in the background.
okay,
Um,
cool.
in Solid 2.0, in Solid 2.0, that's the default, which means this loading fallback, you're going to see it in the first time you render this component because it doesn't have data. But once there is data, you're never going to see this again, because
Okay,
actually it turns out that the default experience being that your existing content gets wiped away and you just see a loading fallback. It's actually a bad default experience because um, most of the time when you have existing content on the screen, you just want to
yeah,
keep showing that to the user while you do things in the background. You don't
hmm,
want to like swipe all that content away just for a loading screen and then bring all of it back. That's actually a weird, jarring user experience.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so so loading fallbacks only show up once, and when you do some updates in the background. So for example, when I added when I like for when I update a to do, or when I add an this one isn't a good example right now.
Oh, let me
Yeah,
switch
but
back.
when I add a new to do, like
Yeah,
here, um, when I add a new to do, I don't want to see my suspense fallback. I just want to see like some loading indicator somewhere, and then the to do should just be added to my screen, right?
yeah,
Or like if I go to a different page, it should render in the background and show up. So that's now the default experience. Um, but this also means that your current page that you're on, or the current view that you're seeing, like it doesn't receive any I guess, yeah. So the other option, like if you don't show a loading fallback to the user, the other option is that you tear, which basically means you show inconsistent state. So for
yeah,
example, um, if I let's say that right now we are just fetching this, but let's say that I had some sort of a list ID, set list ID, and then I'm using this list ID to figure out which actual list I'm showing, right? So when I change the list ID, it should
yeah,
refetch the data and show me the new list.
yeah,
So what happens when I set this list ID to one? Or let's say that I'm also uh, showing this somewhere here, like um, to-do list list ID, right? So when I go to list ID one, um, this is still going to show 0. This is not going to show 1 because we don't actually have the data for list ID 1 yet. So
Yeah.
if this showed 1, then like you would see to do list 1, but you would still see the items from list 0 or the previous list, right? And that
Yeah,
would be
causing
inconsistent. That would
confusion.
be tearing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
That makes a
So
lot of sense.
yeah, so this is another thing that Solid kind of just handles by default, which is that if you set list ID to a different list ID, it's going to make sure that this doesn't actually update until we have the latest data and we are showing all the latest state, all the like fully updated state to the user, so that the user just sees list 0 and that list items, and then list 1 and then the updated list, instead of this weird, inconsistent, confusing state.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No. And yeah, that would just be weird for like, well, one
Mhm.
also like invalid data, really.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. There's a couple questions from
Mhm.
MM Mint in on Twitch. Uh, Two, do you know if there's going to be a solid 3.0? And also, if there isn't, they're saying like the better question is, what are the features that they didn't yet implement in Solid 2.0, or like maybe there's stuff still on the roadmap that's not in there?
Yes. Yes. So you can bet that there is an internal document that goes over some ideas of what we might do in Solid 3.0.
Yeah.
Uh, one of them being server components. And
Okay.
that's not a part of Solid 2.0. It's a big enough change that it's probably going to be a 3.0 thing. Um, but that's not like, again, don't hold me to that. That might change. Um, but yeah, one of the things that I would like to see in Solid 2.0 that Ryan hasn't gotten around to, I guess like there is some internal implementation, but it's not like a very solid public API yet, is like an activity component, which is something React released, I think last year. Um, uh, if you're not familiar with activity component, it's essentially a way to how do I explain this? So any children that the activity, I think activity has like some modes in React where you
Yeah.
can tell it like I want to show it right now, or I want to hide it, disable it. Basically, what it does is like any children of the activity of your activity component, you can hide them from the view without
Okay.
actually like destroying them from in memory, or like without getting rid of all their state. So you can render all those components and keep them in state, but simply like choose like if they are shown in the view in through using CSS or using like document. I'm not super familiar of how it's actually implemented in React,
Okay.
but essentially it's like so you can kind of contrast it with like if like some condition, if that's true, then I show um, some component, right? So in
Yeah.
uh, or null. So you can imagine that if this condition returns false, this component is going to be unmounted, it's going to be destroyed, all of its state is going to be released from memory, and then we're just going to have a null. And then when it becomes true, we are going to render this component, create all of its state, render all of its JSX again, and then bring it on the screen, right? So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
activity is simply a way of telling React that, hey, I don't want to show this component yet, but still render it and keep it in memory.
Yeah.
So that when I do need to show it, I don't need to do all this work again. I just bring it on the screen, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading. I haven't used it. I remember. I think
mhm.
Ricky from the core team might have talked about it, or I was
Yeah,
reading about it. But yeah, I haven't used it either. Um. But yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
So
that's cool.
this exists in React. This has there are some internal APIs in Solid 2.0 that you can use for this, but the actual like public API for an activity component that does things similar to React, that's one of the things on the roadmap that's going to happen once Solid 2.0 is out of beta. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and
Okay.
that's
Cool.
probably like one of the main things, and there might be like one or two other small things. that will come once the actual release is done.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I got Anthony in the chat saying you need to talk about Spectre. um, yeah,
If we have
I
time.
yeah, I guess like I can probably go for like another 24 minutes, so like till 2 p.m. your time if you want. I gotta do some stuff after, but
Mhm.
I guess first question, like Spectre, is it solid at all anywhere under the hood, or is it nothing to do with that? It's really more testing
Mhm.
framework. Like I'm guessing I saw one of your tweets briefly, so it's
Mhm.
like there's obviously all kinds of spec frameworks. I'm assuming
Yeah.
it's related to that, or it's your take on it, or what is it exactly?
Yeah. So the way that I think about Spectre is that uh, it's like two aspects of like building a software with AI that I've tried to combine together. One is like one is like structured specification. So basically, you write your specifications using TypeScript. So
Okay.
you define specifications in a specific structure, and those specifications automatically turn into executable tests. So
Okay.
once you have written your specifications, you have like a deterministic guarantee that these are going to turn into executable tests, and your app is always going to like your whatever the app is, it always going to be tested against these specifications. Um,
Okay.
and the second thing is that it automatically scaffolds most of your app, so that when you actually get to implementation, you have to write like very little bit of just implementation or your business logic instead of
Yeah.
writing the glue logic of your app. So that's like one of the main the like half of like what of Spectre. Like you write specifications, they automatically like in TypeScript, they type check, they
Mhm.
automatically execute, and they scaffold most of your app. So you don't have
Okay.
to write glue logic. The
Okay.
second
Gotcha.
aspect of Spectre is that you build applications in vertical slices that don't depend on each other, which means all your business logic lives in these independent units, independent slices that are like fully co-located, that own like end-to-end logic, um, and they never depend on each other. So you can build and test these slices completely independently of each other,
Okay.
and if you make any changes in one slice, you there is no way that it can affect the behavior of another slice. um, um, so your changes are always isolated to a single slice. Obviously this worked really great for agents, because if you can have a very large, very complicated code base and application, but if it's split into these vertical slices that are independently buildable, testable, that have their own specifications, their own implementation, it makes it like really efficient for agents to work on this on your code bases. So that's kind of like what Spectre is about. It can we can probably do like a whole hour 2 hour stream on Spectre. I actually did one with Anthony like literally yesterday. So
Okay.
if you go to either my YouTube channel or Anthony's YouTube channel, there's a like stream from last night where we dug into Spectre.
Okay.
And I'm going to have like another video about it soon.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't think not that I don't want to talk about it, but I don't think I can dedicate 2 hours today.
Yeah, no worries.
But but yeah, if you're down, I'd be down to chatting about it on another stream another time if you're up for it. Um,
Sure, yeah.
cool.
It's like super early, right? Like there is an NPM package that you can try right now, but it's like you're probably going to run into issues right now.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a while before it's like actually like usable by anyone. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of things that being on the Solid.js core team, like I've learned about frameworks, about APIs that I'm also trying to apply. So yeah, Spectre itself isn't like a UI thing, and there like Solid isn't really a part of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of my learnings working with Ryan, working on Solid, are things that I am now able to apply on whatever projects or frameworks that I go and build.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we definitely. I'll. Well, we can talk another day, but yeah, we can set something up for. I don't know. I'm gonna be getting a little busy again, but I'm sure like maybe July or August we can probably do something again. But
Yeah,
no, that's cool. It
sure.
sounds promising. Um, yeah, I won't ask any questions about it now because it sounds like
No problem. Yeah.
we'll go down a rabbit
Hmm.
hole if not, which is not a bad thing. But
Definitely.
yeah, I do have to do some work and work out at some point. So um, but no, I just want to say like one is great hanging again. It's been a minute. I know we've been chatting a bit on socials, like well, kind of barely, but but this is like a really good run through of like solid in general, but like also what's in the pipe with 2.0 and yeah, like I was saying before, looks like a bunch of friction points were removed, stuff some unnecessary ceremony from the previous version. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to check it out. Like you said, the docs are not really there right now, but I think probably the best thing would be if people are interested in it is to join the Discord. I imagine it's probably like the best.
Yeah. Yeah, join the Discord. There is a next channel. That's where like a lot, almost all of the Solid 2.0 discussions happen. Um, and if you do want to try it out, honestly, like ask your agent to like build an app with Solid 2.0 with the beta, like install with the beta tag, and just
Yeah,
ask it to like look through the look like literally look into the node modules, look at the source code, look at the tests, and it can figure out most of it by just like looking at the source code, and it can
yeah.
explain to you how Solid 2.0 works. It won't get all the details right. So eventually we will also have like a skill.md that actually teaches your agents like the idiomatic patterns, but
Okay,
for the
yeah.
most of it, you can literally point your agent to like the beta version, and it can build you a functioning app.
Oh, awesome. Cool, cool. Well, yeah, thanks for hanging today, Dev, and I'm glad your internet got stable after like maybe that first 20 minutes. So
Same,
that was
yeah, of
awesome. Yeah. But no, this is great, man. Thanks for hanging. If you don't mind just staying on for a second, and everybody else,
course.
thanks for hanging today. Mint, really appreciate you telling me to update my category because that explains a lot of like why am I getting crickets all the time, and I think that is not necessarily the only thing, but that was probably not helping. So appreciate that, man.
Mhm.
Give your follow on Twitch, and yeah, everybody else. I don't have another stream on my own stream in the pipe at the moment, but on the Pomerium stream where I work, I'm hanging out with Roselle Scarlett tomorrow, so you can see that.
Nice.
Just I'll drop a link to that if people want. Or but yeah, yeah, we're gonna be talking about like is AI killing open source, and we're gonna dig into entire a bit as well, which is kind of like I guess kind of deemed like potentially a new GitHub. The ex CEO of GitHub is started this. Roselle's working over there now, so I'm curious to dig into all that. So check that out, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one, peeps.